Here's a guy that doesn't deal with psychos. He puts them away. Here's a look at the brand new Sly Stallone shop, the Stallone Legacy Collection, Cobra's Marion Cobretti 1/6 scale collectible action figure. The Sylvester Stallone Legacy Collection presents Cobra's Marion Cobretti, the first ever officially licensed figure in 1/6 scale. Just before we find out what diseases Cobretti can cure, I'd like to go ahead first and thank the folks over at Sly Stallone Shop that did make this review possible by sending over this early look at Cobretti, who is currently right now on their site as a pre-order with a slated shipping date of January 2024. You can currently add this one over on your cart for $290, or if as well, you can also go the route of 4 interest-free installments of $72.50 a piece. We're also going to bring in the earlier looked at John Rambo from First Blood. But in the meantime as well, I'm obviously going to grab the tape measure and show you guys how tall the figure stands. Cobretti stands in this case 12 inches in height, or the figure is going to be 30 centimeters tall. Now, in regards to John Rambo, let's slide over the Cobretti that we're about to have a look at and bring in again the earlier looked at John Rambo. Now, I have seen other individuals mention that the figures don't seem to be of the same scale. I don't see it myself, honestly. Now, I did notice, though, that Cobretti getting him out of the box, his legs weren't completely straight. His knees seemed slightly bent. Straightening out the legs, and you can see that the figures are going to be about the same size to one another. If you're lining up about the eye area, John Rambo is, again, about the same size as Cobretti, which, of course, would make sense, because Sly Stallone would have portrayed both the roles. The figure comes included with a pretty cool looking display stand. That, of course, telling us right away what movie this is going to be taken from. We've got ourselves, of course, the front crest and head of the Cobra itself. The Cobra is spiraling its way around a circular display stand. It gives us a real opportunity to see the sculpting work that they've applied to the stand itself. And while it doesn't really have a whole lot of coloring, it has the coloring where it counts. Beady little red eyes, for example, the gummed areas of the teeth are painted nicely here in pink. It, again, is a really interesting way to have the figure displayed. The thing, though, about it, though, is that the figure has an adjustable neck that's located at the back of the display stand. The thing about it, though, is while you are taking the figure of Cobretti and you put him down on the display stand, he seems to sit really far back on the stand. Let me just turn it sideways so you can see what I'm seeing. Now, I would have honestly taken the display stand neck, and instead of having it further at the back here, I would have actually made it more in the center. Because if you were to say, for example, take Cobretti and you had him standing right in the middle, then you'd have about the same amount of space of snake on both the front and back. It's the only thing I would have maybe done differently when it came to the display stand. So, for example, like it comes in obviously 2 parts. Instead of having it here, I would have had it maybe right around here, a little bit, maybe not even dead center in the middle, but a little bit further back from that. So at least there was enough real estate space around for where Cobretti would be able to stand. Unfortunately, though, they just have put the neck at the back of the display stand. It's the only thing I would have done, like I said, a little bit different when it comes to the stand itself. Treated on the bottom of this as well, you've got yourself 4 rubberized feet to prevent scratching on surfaces. It also gives you as well an opportunity to kind of see some slightly off coloring that they've added to this as well. A little bit of more of a yellowish. It doesn't have as much of that here to the top. You see a little bit more of it down kind of on the more belly of the snake. Another thing I did also want to show you guys before we get down to looking at the accessories is you get yourself also a smaller poster of the bigger box artwork that we saw at the beginning of the video. Here we, of course, get Marion Cobretti sporting pretty much the same image that he has on the poster itself, but done slightly different. You can see it has sort of more of a painted look to it. Really like the neat way they designed that. And of course, when it comes to displaying this, I'm going to have this displayed along with the figure, probably not right near the front, but maybe around the back area of the figure. But flip this around to the back. You can kind of see all the talented people behind the scenes that were responsible for making Cobretti a realized figure. Obviously, supervision and direction by Sylvester Stallone himself, executive producer and direction Nick Cardasco from the Sly Stallone Shop, artistic direction and production management by Fabio Veresi, 3D head sculpt by Inigo Gill, 3D accessory design by Sean Dabbs, master paint Dario Barbara, and box artwork, the one that I really liked. This is one of my favorite things about it. is the fact that the box artwork was done by John Rivoli. And again, you can check out his by heading over to www.iconinsart.com. And of course, down below, you've got still the advertisement for the store itself at www.slystalloneshop.com. As it is right now, I think they only have John Rambo and then the pre-order here for Cobretti, but they also have since advertised images of the new upcoming Rocky Rocky, a figure I'm definitely looking forward to seeing in hand. Running now through the figure's accessories, the first thing we'll start with happens to be the smallest and most likely to be lost. I'm not sure if you guys can even see this or not, but the figure comes included like he has in the movie. 3 tiny little matchsticks. The matchsticks are quite small. I'm hoping even that the camera's able to pick it up. The material, in fact, that they've used for this almost does seem like it's wood. It also means that because it's made of wood and just by the thin nature of it, it's very prone to bending. Just pick your figure up. And when you look at Cobretti, you'll notice that there doesn't seem to be a hole anywhere on his lip. So it's only just by the friction alone to get the matchstick in his mouth. And I've already done this several times where I try to get the matchstick in, only to ultimately drop it. They're quite small, and again, very prone to losing. I have, again, dropped one. I'm going to see if I can do it with another one. With them being so thin like this, they're very prone to bending. So again, like you're probably not wanting to do this too often, but he does have somewhat the means to hold the matchstick, although it's just really not easy to do. I would have said it would have been nice if they could have put a hole in his mouth, but the only thing about that, though, is by not always having a matchstick displayed with him, the figure would then be very likely, well, you would then see a hole left behind in his lip. Like, again, it does fit okay, but there's real no workaround. See, there we go, right there. I've just barely balanced it in there. He has the means, at least, to hold the matchstick, but again, it's more just a case of frictioning it in between his lips to get him to hold the matchstick in place. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say I would have wanted a head sculpt that had a permanent matchstick attached, because you may not always want that specific look. Just again, be careful, because you only have 3 of these to work with. Putting that down, I'm just going to kind of slide those matchsticks to the side, because I definitely don't want to lose those. I guess in next order of smallest things, the figure comes also included with his movie wristwatch. The watch seems to be the case where they've actually printed the face of the watch and then added a clear dome over top of it. The attention to detail for something so small like this really shows the dedication that Sly Stallone Shop has to faithfully reproduce these figures as they would have appeared in the movie. I think he actually has the wristwatch, if memory serves me correctly, on this side of his hand. So again, all we'll really need to do is just roll up the sleeves here, remove one of the hands. We only really need to remove the one, and then take the wristwatch and carefully slide it up. I will eventually be removing the jacket to show you guys all the musculature that they sculpted into the figure. Like the case when we looked at John Rambo before, the attention to detail on these things is incredible. Another small thing that comes included with the figure, and not as much likely to be lost as, say, the matchsticks, the figure also comes included with this chain necklace. It seems to be a real chain. And while normally a chain necklace like this would only involve you having to kind of detach this, fit it around whatever you want to put it, and then put it back in place, I find it's actually just easier just to take the figure and pop his head off the provided cylinder post. Instead of relying on ball joints, I'm glad to see that they actually use these cylinder cans, essentially, where you have a much larger socket and then it basically just fits over top, instead of having to fight with ball joints all the time. Take your necklace, carefully fit it over top of the cylinder there, and get it far enough down then on the neck, you can put the head back on top of the neck. Now he's got his chain necklace in place. The figure also comes included with his badge. Now the thing about the badge is that, like in the movie, I think he wears it on the side of his belt. It clips in a way, it's actually a plastic clip, and I found it was kind of hard initially to do this. What I ended up doing was, and if you look at actually the way they've designed this, like in the movie, he has his belt buckle, instead of being in the center, he wears it off to the side. Again, attention to detail. The badge isn't, again, honestly, the easiest thing to fit in place. I found if anything, it just helps to kind of take yourself something to wedge it out. I'm using a knife. Probably a knife is not the best idea to be using, but it's just enough to, again, pry this away. You could also use a screwdriver too, but it's just enough to get the belt away from the pants, and then slide the badge, I should say, in place. And again, it just slides in place like that. Now, again, it's not the easiest thing to do. The belt is just so close to his pants that it makes things almost very difficult. You can also even really use your finger too. Just pry that enough away that you can get then the badge in there. May even just have to revisit that a little bit later. But he does have, again, like a tiny little badge. Very nice detail that they've added in there as well. And while we put the figure back down, he also comes included with his glasses. Now, you choose for yourself as to how you really want to have this displayed. I like the glasses personally on my Cobra figure, and I think when it comes to actually displaying him, I'm likely going to be taking the jacket off and leaving his rolled up sleeve shirt underneath, and I'll be wearing the glasses from there. The glasses are, though, slightly tinted in purple, and you can just take your figure once again and fit the glasses over top. There's enough sticking out from his ears, at least, that it more than is enough to hold the glasses in place. Just want to make sure that, of course, when you're doing it, that you have the lenses, the little arms of the glasses, fit well enough over top of the ears. So again, the glasses aren't going to fall off. They're going to stay in place. And again, that finished the look really nicely. And of course, the only thing left to then do is just add the little matchstick. Easier said than done. The figure also comes included, like he has in the movie, 2 firearms. He has the smaller of the two, which, while he didn't have it in the poster, he usually more sports it kind of tucked in the top of his pants. The figure has, I think this is actually a gold or Colt Gold Cup National Match. It does actually have, what's rather interesting though, a removable magazine. The magazine's a little hard to get to though. You have to kind of get your finger in there and just pry the sides, or actually even just, there you go, get your finger in there. It does actually have a removable magazine. You can see a bullet already in the chamber, and that just slides in place. The detail, as you can see there, is done to the handles like it has in the movie, the little Cobra symbol, and that's the case actually on both the sides if I just spin this around. Yeah, a really neat looking gun. Again, I think this is a Colt Gold Cup National Match. A little harder to kind of say that all out of your mouth. The figure also comes included with the kind of more recognizable weapon that he has in the movie, the Legitimatic submachine gun. It actually has a few little things, that extra little goodies here. First of all, this does swing out like in the poster. It does swing out, so you can actually have this on just like sticking out like this. The only thing about it, though, I'm going to go ahead and retrieve the laser in a second. It doesn't swing out necessarily. It looks almost to be the case that there's these tiny little clips on both sides, and for all intents and purposes, it's supposed to sit on the end of this, and I'm guessing it's supposed to swing forward. I don't really necessarily swing it forward, as I find every single time I do it, this pops off. I just find it's easier just to remove it, then slide it in place, or actually more so just kind of pop it onto the end of it. And then you can have the submachine gun displayed like that. Now, in the movie, and also in the poster art as well, he has this little red marking there on the side. And again, they've added the attention to the detail there as well. Going now and retrieving the sight. Back then, it would have been a Laser Productions Corporation laser sight, now commonly more known as Surefire laser sights. Either way, though, there's a little clip on the back, sort of a C-shaped clip, and then the front of the barrel of the sight actually then fits into the clip that's provided on the front of the gun. When you are, though, putting the two together, it doesn't really sit to a point where I feel it clicks in place. And usually when I'm then moving the figure around, or I'm just moving the gun itself, this is always something, again, that usually falls off. There almost seems to be like a little notch there on the end of it, where for all intents and purposes, it looks like it should actually fit on the inside there, but actually more so just sort of fits in place. And you want to just kind of hope that it stays in place. It clips better here than it does on the front. But again, it survives at least to tip this upside down. And speaking of which, upside down, or at least on the bottom of it, you can as well remove the clip. Let's just remove the magazine here from the submachine gun. And while it doesn't seem to have a bullet in the chamber, I'm glad to see as well that there's still a removable clip to it. Now, this will be, of course, displayed with the figure when it comes to putting this guy on my shelf. You can also as well take the provided holster that he has, like he has in the movie. And this is a two-shoulder, basically essentially a strapped shoulder holster. On one side would be the thing that holds the submachine gun. On the other side, though, he has all these removable clips. Now, you can't just open these up and remove easily the magazines. All of the magazines, by the way, don't seem to have bullets in their chambers. But I'm glad to see that they actually had, again, attention to detail, the means to at least remove the magazine if you wanted to have additional ones used. Of course, all of this will then involve having to take off the jacket for Stallone. And one other thing I did also want to mention, though, about his belt, going back to it earlier, the belt I did realize was actually on a Velcro closure. So, and actually, it's a lot easier to remove the belt, or open the belt at least, and then take yourself your badge and slide the badge then on the inside, rather than even having to pry it open in the first place. You can also do that as well with the next accessories that we're about to have a look at. Just literally slide this in place, and then you take the other end, which basically has the hooks, and loop it then onto the Velcro, and it closes in proper place. One other thing, actually, just before we get down to looking at the hands, the figure also as well comes included with grenades. He comes with 2 grenades. I just happen to have another one over here to the side. Let's just grab that right now. He's got 2 grenades. Don't seem to have removable pins necessarily, but he has 2 grenades that, of course, you can clip then onto the belt itself. Rounding out the last remaining things, the figure also as well comes with some swappable hands. Already, as you can see, installed to the forearms, the figure has some closed fists. But if you, though, prefer to have him, especially with guns in his hands, triggering, firing finger hands definitely would be the better hands to go with. And then he also as well comes with some relaxed hands too. So there are, a couple of hands to work with. Now, of course, let's go ahead and get the jacket off, because I did want to show you guys how to install the holster. First of all, it's easiest to really first remove the hands. If you're feeling a little uneasy, though, by the idea that his belt, or his watch, I should say, is just attached onto the wrist, it's actually even better just to remove that as well. We'll do the, you know what, we'll also take the glasses off too, because I just don't want to damage these in the process. Just easily unhook those, just put them to the side. We'll go ahead as well to remove the other hand. And then all we'll really need to then do is just bring the jacket back. I guess really before we do that, I did want to show you guys the work that they put into the jacket itself. Individually stitching in their separate buttons, a totaling of 5. One down at the bottom there as well. There's even a little belt loop there on the back to tighten up the jacket. Rolled up sleeves. Again, like the attention to tailorship on this, like even on the inside, everything looks really nicely finished for the jacket itself. But if you again did want to have this, I prefer myself for displaying Cobra, I'd rather have really the jacket removed. Slide off easily the jacket. We'll just put that to the side. And then we'll basically then just put the holster in place. Just before I actually do that, I did want to fix the belt. There we go. I did also want to roll up the sleeves, because I did want to show you guys the work that they put to sculpting the arms. Now, the build and body here for Stallone is very obviously different from other 6-scale figures we looked at normally here on this channel. Like, there's a lot of musculature that they've actually sculpted. It's a little, granted, hard to do this, obviously, with the shirt being tucked in. But hopefully you guys can see, he's got a really good muscular body, really full in figure, obviously matching that of Stallone back in the day. Now, obviously, if you guys did want to then add the vest, or I should say like the holster will slide on one side of his body. Just slide it up his provided arms, and you can then just drape this around to the other side. I find it's actually easier just to kind of get it on one arm first, and then from there just kind of bend the other arm that you weren't already attaching onto, and then just slide the other holster in place. So essentially what it is it runs across the back of his shoulder. It doesn't necessarily attach anywhere in place either, so I mean, basically it just runs loose like this to the side. But on one side, again, you're going to have the magazines. It's going to be a little bit more closer in quarters when it comes to his arms, just because, again, his arm's going to get really close to the holster. But then on the other side is the section that holds then the submachine gun. Just going to bring his arms up. And this actually does open up as well. This is, by the way, using kind of more of a plastic tab rather than actually using material. By using plastic, it's a lot easier to do this back up instead of having like material, for example, that's very prone to bending back and forth. Just move his arms, though, out of the way. You can then take yourself your machine gun. Let's just maybe put the figure down here for a second. What I will, though, do is I'm just going to take the laser off first, the laser scope. You can leave the magazine where it is. It doesn't need to be removed at all. Just make sure I got it going the right way. And then from there, you're just going to holster this inside. Now, I find it's actually easier first to attach this into the holster. And then once that's in place, then go back and take the laser sight and then fit that in place on top of it. But it basically just, let's see if I can actually show you what's going on here. All you're really going to then do is you're going to take this, you're going to wrap this around, and then you're going to take the other end. You want to make sure everything's kind of in place here. And then that's just going to tab just into that little plastic piece. It's not really easy to do, obviously, if I'm just doing this in front of a camera. It's a lot easier, obviously, if you're going to be doing this just, if you guys are just holding the figure in your hand. Let's just see if I can actually get this. May have to even, again, go back to that a little bit later. But he essentially holds the gun in place, and then you can attach the laser on top of the laser sight on top of that. Like I said, when it comes to the holster, if we just spin this around to the back, you can kind of see they're using sort of more of a faux leather material. There's a little adjustment strap there on the top, and there's, well, some additional adjustment straps on the front of the shoulders as well. Personally, for me, when it comes to displaying the figure, short of maybe just adding some additional hands, definitely going to be going more the route, I think, of displaying the figure without the jacket. And let's go ahead and just attach a couple of extra hands there as well. For me, at least, I would much rather have the figure displayed, I think, without the jacket. Just because when I think of Cobra, I tend to think of the poster right away. Or I tend to think of usually most of the production stills when it comes to that character. And he always seems to be more displayed, I feel, with the jacket off. So that's what he looks like with the holster in place. With all that being said, let's now get a closer look at Cobra himself. Now, I got to say, like Marion Cobretti, One of my favorite roles for John Rambo. It's right up there, I feel, with like Tango and Cash. I know obviously people always think of Rocky or they think of Rambo, and I really like both the roles for the actor. But there's something to be said about, I want to say, like the charm that goes along with Cobra. And certainly when it comes to doing a 6-scale release of him, I think Cobra's a good candidate for really showing, again, like the work that they put into these pieces. From a head sculpt standpoint, it's definitely one of the best Sylvester Stallone sculpts we've gotten. And even then, to compare it with their earlier release, of course, the John Rambo from First Blood, I will say, like, I think this one looks much more like Stallone. Not that it wasn't the case before when we looked at John Rambo. Let's just bring back in John Rambo. You can see, like, both of them do a superior job of showcasing Stallone. But I feel like the one that we get here with Cobretti looks maybe just a little bit more like him, which is really, again, hard to say. Maybe it just has something to do with the fact that he's also sporting shorter hair. Of course, when it comes to the rest of his body, all the new sculpting that they've applied to the body, I think actually Stallone has a notable muscle that's right here on the top of his forearm. They've taken the time to sculpt that in place as well. The only thing that does concern me, though, is being the fact that this is using a plastic flesh-colored body. I wonder if over time this will start to develop staining from like the shirt itself. I mean, you're only probably going to have the shirt rolled up like this all the time anyways. Maybe perhaps it could be the case that with the jacket being on him all the time, it may start to settle some of the stain off the black onto the skin. Not having that figure for that very long, I can't really tell if that's going to be the case or not. For me, at least, again, I'm probably just going to have the figure displayed with the sleeves, the shirt sleeves underneath, and maybe just not have the figure displayed with the jacket. I mean, the option is still there. I prefer, I think, having the figure without the jacket. Further from that, of course, down below here, he's got a pair of scuffed up jeans. There are a few little natural wear and tear that jeans would start developing over time, and they have even taken the liberty of like stitching in the natural coloring of jean, like that the threading that they would have actually used, like the yellowing, for example, is around the areas of his pockets. These pockets, by the way, are real functioning pockets. Not that you really have anything to fit inside the pockets. I guess if you wanted to, you could try to put the pistol in there. I would certainly not recommend putting the matchsticks in there, because that would be definitely something that would be lost. And of course, they also have stitched pockets on the back of the figure's body as well. It doesn't feel as much like denim, but it certainly feels like it's pretty close to denim. And if we just like roll up the bottoms of his legs as well, the figure does also have cowboy boots. The thing about the boots, though, is this seems to be kind of more of a harder material. It still seems to be material, but you can definitely notice that there's more of a faux leather that they've used for the top of the boots. And of course, you've also got the straps there across the top there as well. All in all, though, again, like it's a figure that looks just like him from the movie itself. And I think from a paint standpoint, they've really, I think, landed a perfect portrait of again, Sylvester Stallone from Cobra. The only thing I would also say, just before we kind of get down to looking at the posability on the figure, is that when you look at the coloring of the neck, isn't it quite not the same color as this face? The face is maybe just a little bit of a lighter skin color, but again, it's pretty close to the coloring of his neck. Just something, again, I did want to notice. Now, for the figure's posability, starting first, of course, with his head sculpt, it is on a ball joint, so it's going to allow you to move the head up and down, back and forth as well. And for all intents and purposes, you can also rotate it as well. The neck itself, if I can actually just open up the V section of his shirt, you can kind of see again, like there's all just one sculpting. So like the chest goes right into the neck. There's no secondary ball joint. I don't really think it in a case like this. The sculpt is the key. The thing that sells the figure the most is how well they've sculpted the figure. I don't think it necessarily needed a secondary ball joint at the base of the neck. Now, the arms do hinge out. They are going to be a little on the more tighter side, just because, again, he's got a much more bigger build than other 6-scale figures. But you can bring the arms out at about 45 degrees. You can bring the arms forward and, of course, back. I would probably not recommend, though, rotating the arm all the way around. The figure seems to only have a single hinge in his elbow. It does mean, unfortunately, when it comes to bending the arm, that you can only go so far, unfortunately, with the bend of Cobra. So like if, for example, you wanted to have him in that iconic movie poster pose where he's actually got the gun in his hand, you can still pull it off, but you can't quite pull it off because he doesn't have a full 90-degree angle. I mean, even just to roll up the sleeves, you can see there it is right there. You can only see that he's got a single hinge there working behind the scenes for the elbow. Now, the upper torso is on a ball joint. It actually cuts, so not really where his pectorals are, but just a little bit lower than that. Right around here in this abdomen area is actually the part where this crunches. He also has a secondary ball joint at the base of the abdomen, so that rotates all the way around as well. Legs do split out only about that far. Normally, like regular wearing jeans as well, you can only go so far when it comes to splits in jeans. You take the legs and move them forward, only about that far. You can also as well move them back. Figure has a swivel at the top of the thigh. A double hinge, unlike in the elbows, he has at least a double hinge in the knees, and he also has articulation in the boot. Now, again, going back to the boot, though, because, again, this is a softer faux leather material that they would have used for the boot, I don't know how much I would want to really be bending the boots back and forth, because I would feel like over time this would start to split that material that they're using. I don't plan to put him in any crazy poses anyways. The pose that he's in right now, short of maybe just adding the glasses, adding the matchstick, and of course adding the armory that he carries around with him all the time throughout the movie, that's about the only way I'm going to be displaying the figure as well. All in all, though, job well done by the folks over at Sly Stallone Shop. Again, we're just going to slide over here, Marion Cobretti, bring in the earlier looked at John Rambo from First Blood. And again, I'm really loving this line so far. Now, again, like to compare the two figures, if I can just get him a stand here, some had said, though, that the Cobra didn't look like he was going to be, or it looked like he was a tad bit taller than Rambo. Maybe he is just only by a little bit. I mean, again, like I'm looking at the eyes and I'm lining them up as best I can, and it looks to me like they look like they're the same height. And I would imagine as well, with Stallone working behind the scenes, doing that final go-ahead of approving these figures before they hit the collector's market. Got to believe that he would have also looked at these as well and said, okay, like they have to be of the same size. They're the same actor, they have to be of the same size. And again, like having the two on the shelf, if you're a big fan of Sly Stallone and all the movies that he's appeared in, especially if you're also a fan of Cobra, picking up Marion Cobretti seems like a no-brainer. Being a big fan of Cobra myself, I was certainly excited to see what Sly Stallone Shop was going to do when it came to handling Marion Cobretti. Now finally having him in hand, he looks the part. He looks like a smaller Stallone in 6-scale format, and he has all the accessories that you would have seen in the movie him wielding, all conveniently stored away on the figure. Some of the accessories, though, are a little harder to put on the figure, like, for example, his little tiny badge. The little grenades aren't as hard to clip around his belt, for example, but I had honestly the hardest time of just trying to attach onto the badge. At least now realizing that you can detach the belt by Velcro, it's a lot easier, I will say, to slide the badge in place. And of course, when it comes to him being displayed, I'm leaning more to the idea of displaying him without the jacket personally, just because, again, like looking at him right now, I mean, again, it looks like the movie poster, just in a smaller scale. The only thing about the figure is the matchsticks. Now, obviously, with the matchsticks, there's really no designated place on the mouth that I can see, at least. There's no hole necessarily, because obviously if the matchsticks weren't on his face, then you just see a hole left behind on his lip. Rather, instead, it's actually just relying on you with a little bit of patience, a little bit of time, and of course making sure that you're not losing those matchsticks, because they are pretty small, but they do fit there and they stay there, providing you're not going to be moving the figure around. It's probably best advised, I find at least, to probably move the figure around, decide what pose you want to put him in, then carefully putting the matchstick in between his lips. All in all, though, I really like the John Rambo that we got earlier from First Blood, but I'm loving, though, Marion Cobretti. Now, that may very well change with the future releases that they have planned already. We are seeing images online of their pre-order for the Rocky one, Rocky, and I'm hoping at some point we obviously are going to be running more the gambit of all the Stallone movies, with Sly Stallone now running this and ensuring, of course, that the quality is made from the time that they're producing the figures to the time the collectors are getting these figures. Rest assured, I'm sure this isn't going to be the end of the Sly Stallone legacy collection, and I'm really liking what they've done with Marion Cobretti. What do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. Is this a figure you guys could see yourselves picking up? Once again, a big thank you to the folks over at Sly Stallone Shop that did provide this early look at Cobra's Marion Cobretti, that we could have a look at this review. He is still, as of right now, a pre-order on their site for $290. He is slated to ship in January of 2024, so at the beginning of next year. And at the price point of what this guy's going for is $290, or again, you can go the route of 4 interest-free installments of $72.50. What do you guys think of this figure? Again, let me know down below in the comments section. And what other Stallone characters from movies would you like to see be released from the Sly Stallone Shop? I mean, the obvious ones would be Rocky. The obvious ones would also be John Rambo. But what is another character that you would love to see a 6-scale release for? I'm thinking personally Stallone from Tango and Cash. Yeah, I like Tango and Cash. I mean, we're not probably going to be getting a Kurt Russell anytime soon, unless Kurt Russell has got his own store that's going to be making 6-scale figures. But I would certainly like to see Sly Stallone from Tango and Cash get a 6-scale release. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, and you certainly would like to stick around for more, if you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on as well the bell notification. If you haven't already, by the way, and you didn't get the chance to check out my review of John Rambo, give that a bit of a gander. Feel free to check that out after this video has finished wrapping up. And of course, there's going to be a lot more videos coming away, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.